Joining us now, senior editor at The Atlantic and host of Radio Atlantic, Hanna Rosin, staff writer for The Atlantic and MSNBC political contributor Mark Leibovich, and presidential historian and professor of history at Rice University, Douglas Brinkley. All right, speaking of backlash, let us also play a little bit from Andrew Schultz's podcast.
In terms of censorship, freedom of speech is more under attack now, honestly, than I think it has ever been. I don't know if that's me being hyperbolic.
Maybe. I mean, as far as what Jimmy said, I think it's untrue, or at least unfair.
I don't agree with what he said. I don't like what he said. We should also say that. I don't agree with what he said. I don't like what he said. He should be allowed to say it. And what happened to Charlie Kirk is worse. Charlie Kirk should have been allowed to say the things we didn't like. Jimmy Kimmel should be allowed to say the things we didn't like. That's just what America is.
Yeah.
And freedom of speech, I've seen it truly under attack in India, where it's like you can go to jail. This is closer to that than I think what the left was doing.
There's also the Wall Street Journal editorial board saying it's not right. The Free Press editors saying it's not right. Is this a backlash, Hanna?
Well, it's interesting that it's both Ted Cruz, Free Press, and the left. I don't think we've seen any results of the backlash, if it is a backlash, because the problem here is not what Jimmy Kimmel said, it's what the government did. So we would need for the government to behave differently and the administration to behave differently. I'm not sure that the Trump administration or the FCC is going to be moved by what the Free Press or what the podcast says.
What about what Ted Cruz says? I mean, what is Ben Shapiro said it? I mean, who are the influencers? Who are the people that hold leverage over the administration, Mark?
Well, I mean, certainly voters or what they perceive to be their political benefits. But ultimately, it's worth pointing out that Jimmy Kimmel's fate here does not rest on whether the administration decides whether or not he should be on the air. I mean, that's a Disney call, or that's a call of, whatever, corporate pressures went into having him be sidelined right now. And I think, there's a big chain of outrage here and a lot of chain of the cause has many, many actors here. But ultimately, I mean, that's where this decision came down. And look, it's just not a fair playing field. And I think it's not surprising. I think it's refreshing to hear people like Ted Cruz and some other Republican senators, and certainly other people who call themselves free speech absolutists, and they did when they were defending Elon Musk around Twitter and so forth. But, it's hard to sort of put all of this together in a rational way around which the administration is going to speak with a rational voice, which I think we see is not going to probably happen anytime soon.
Well, let me play on that note. Let me not play, but show you what Vice President J.D. Vance just put out there on X. He says the belly aching from the left over free speech after the Biden years fools precisely no one. There was a point where I'd watch his show nearly every night, Kimmel. He's a genuinely talented guy, but like so much good and funny in the world, the woke thing destroyed it. Hanna, just bring us up to speed. Why is the right so, what were they so angry about during the Biden years? What did they feel was censorship? What did they feel was cancel culture? What did they feel was a violation that justifies what's happening now?
Well, this is the critical distinction. What they were complaining about was cultural censorship. And we can argue about which one is more powerful. It's not that cultural censorship isn't a overwhelming force in society. But when we say free press or we're talking about the Constitution, we're talking about the very fact that the vice president feels entitled to weigh in on the firing of a late night comedian and is not acknowledging that he might have some power in this situation or be able to direct the FCC to do things or say things that they don't normally do. So these aren't equals that they're arguing about.
Let me play a little bit of Jon Stewart at the Mark Twain Awards. This is from, I believe, a few years ago. It sounds pretty predictive of the future. Let me play it.
The threat to comedy doesn't change the world, but it's a bellwether. We're the banana peel in the coal mine. When a society is under threat, comedians are the ones who get sent away first. It's just a reminder to people that democracy is under threat. Authoritarians are the threat to comedy, to art, to music, to thought, to poetry, to progress, to all those things. What we have is fragile and precious. And the way to guard against it isn't to change how audiences think. It's to change how leaders lead.
A lot of people are saying this is exactly what's happening right now. Is it hyperbolic to look at what Jon Stewart said a few years ago, back in 2022, that the biggest threat to democracy, the biggest threat to an authoritarian is comedy, and that the mark of a healthy democracy is, can comedy be practiced? Can comedians say whatever they want to? Doug.
You know, we're living in the world now of the woke right. This is cancel culture, the erosion of free speech, the muzzling of satirists and comedians, and it's really Donald Trump's opening salvo, or one of the first ones that we're going to be having to endure. You know, back in the 1960s, the progenitors of free speech were comedians. It was Lenny Bruce, who whenever he'd show up at a nightclub, the police would come and cart him away. It was the Smothers Brothers that were on television, and they got taken off because they had Pete Seeger sing about the Big Muddy or told a couple of anti-war jokes during the Nixon era. And, you know, Trump can go through the lineup of comedians, but they've done worse or equal with banned books. The greatest satirist when I grew up was Kurt Vonnegut, and now you can't get his novel Slaughterhouse is being banned from libraries. You know, people don't want to see Catch-22 of Joseph Heller read anymore because it mocks things. So we're looking at the federal government, the right in America, with some exceptions, like you just heard Ted Cruz, but they have inherited now, they are trying to run their own culture cancel war, and they're trying to cancel anybody they don't agree with. Kimmel being just the most recent and most high-profile fatality of that.
You compared this to years past. I wonder, is it different? Is it worse? Are we in the same spot? Give me some historical perspective, Doug.
Well, Richard Nixon tried to do something like this. There was great concern that Nixon had of the liberal media. I mean, he started using you know, all sorts of bugging of Walter Cronkite, CBS News correspondents, going after IRS, looking into reporters, squelching comedians, harassing Black Panthers, hippies, yippies. You know, it became rip down the anti-war left and civil rights activists that were getting out of control, particularly after Dr. King denounced the Vietnam War at the Riverside Church speech in 1967. So it's Nixonian what's going on right now. So we've kind of lived through it. But Trump, there were blowback because there is no Congress, there is no Supreme Court. You know, the most you're going to be able to do is sue. Jimmy Kimmel might be able to sue. Just keep suing, and hope that you can get some Republicans to stand up for free speech, not just Ted Cruz, but a number of them could say, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel, I don't watch him, but I don't like big, powerful corporations able to squash free speech simply because the president's not going to is going to make us pay more money. I don't know that that's what happened at ABC, but it sure smells like it because of the way Trump gloats about each time he goes after a major media corporation. And then you just saw today the New York Times win. I mean, the New York Times got sued, and the courts were, for the time being, are saying, give me a break. What a frivolous thing. Trump just does these things and hopes they stick. And unfortunately, ABC Disney has done us a disservice against free speech. They're leading to the erosion of it that people like Orwell had warned us about.
So the other question is who might be next? And Brendan Carr is signaling who might be next pretty clearly. Let me play him talking about The View.
The FCC does have a rule called the equal opportunity rule, which means, for instance, if you're in the run-up to an election, you have one partisan elected official on, you have to give equal time, equal opportunity to the opposing partisan politician. So far, so good. But there's an exception to that rule called the bona fide news exception, which means if you are a bona fide news program, you don't have to abide by the equal opportunity rule. And over the years, the FCC has developed a body of case law on that and has suggested that most of these late night shows, other than SNL, are bona fide news programs. And potentially, I would assume, you can make the argument that The View is a bona fide news show. But I'm not so sure about that. And I think it's worthwhile to have the FCC look into whether The View and some of these other programs that you have still qualify as bona fide news programs and therefore exempt from the equal opportunity regime that Congress has put in place.
Listen, The View is, not talking about Jimmy Kimmel. Didn't mention it yesterday, and as I'm checking right now, didn't mention it today. So at the very least, there appears to be, Mark, a chill in the air. And I think it's important to once again reemphasize the moment we're in. Broadcast networks, TV, in the most vulnerable situation it has ever been in. Fewer people are watching. The financial structures are no longer as strong as they were. The ability to push back and to stand your ground if you are a big corporation, you just don't have it the way you might have had it 10, 15, 20, certainly not 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, not even close. I mean, I think the levels of really sort of just basically caving in to what the administration's wishes are, it's reinforced across the board. I mean, certainly media is a glaring example at this point, but it begins with sort of the entire Republican Party, and you certainly have law firms, you have universities. I mean, you can go down the list at this point. But yeah, no, I mean, it's chilling, extremely chilling. I mean, the silence in some ways is just as troubling as what we've seen in the last few days. But the fact is, and this goes to Hannah's original point, which is there's a difference between cultural pressure and actual state pressure. And this looks a lot like, the state exerting pressure over private or over the media in ways that is in direct violation of the First Amendment, and obviously very troubling given what's happened.